Yo, Dubai! Land of skyscrapers, fancy cars, and gold-plated everything. You've seen it on Instagram, right? It's like everyone's living the high life. Dubai's got this global image of being a playground for the rich and famous. And don't get me wrong, it is. But like any good movie, there's a behind-the-scenes story. Dubai's rise from the desert is pretty impressive. It went from camels to Cadillacs faster than you can say oil money. It's a global hub now with people from all over the place. But this rapid change has created some interesting dynamics, especially regarding how people live and work. While some folks are sipping mocktails on yachts, others are working their butts off to build those yachts. It's this contrast that makes Dubai such a fascinating place to talk about. It's a city of extremes, and understanding both sides of the coin is key to really getting Dubai. Okay, let's talk about the other side of Dubai. The side that doesn't make it to the glossy brochures or the glamorous Instagram posts. Yeah, the one they don't show you in the brochures. The side that's hidden behind the glitz and glamour, the side that's often overlooked. It's the laborers, the construction workers, the domestic workers, the backbone of the city, the unsung heroes who keep the wheels turning, the ones who make the city run, you know? They are the ones who build the skyscrapers, clean the homes, and keep everything functioning smoothly. They come from all over the world, mostly from South Asia, to find work and send money back home. They leave behind their families, their homes, and their lives, all in search of better opportunities. It's a sacrifice, man. They leave their families behind, hoping for a better future. They endure long hours and tough conditions, all for the sake of providing for their loved ones. And they work hard in the scorching heat, building the Dubai dream for everyone else. They toil under the relentless sun day in and day out, to create the iconic skyline that the world admires. Now, I'm not saying everyone in Dubai is rolling in dough. There are plenty of people just trying to get by, just like anywhere else. The middle-class expats, the small business owners, the everyday workers. Plenty of expats are just trying to make a living, just like anywhere else. They work regular jobs, they face challenges, and they have their own struggles. The cost of living in Dubai? Not cheap, my friends. Rent, groceries, utilities, it all adds up. And for many it's a constant balancing act to make ends meet. But it's the stark difference between the haves and the have-nots that's hard to ignore. The contrast is everywhere. From the luxury cars to the modest living conditions of the workers. You got folks in gold-plated cars stuck in traffic, next to a bus full of laborers heading to a construction site. It's a visual representation of the economic divide that exists in the city. It's a lot to take in. The juxtaposition of wealth and poverty, the dreams and the sacrifices all coexisting in this dazzling metropolis. Let me tell you about a guy I met, Raju. He was from Nepal, working construction on one of those massive towers in Dubai. You know, the kind that pierces the sky and makes you wonder how on earth they built it. Raju's job was grueling, often involving long hours under the scorching sun. He told me about his family back home, how he sent them almost every dirham he made. His eyes lit up when he talked about his kids and the dreams he had for them. He told me about his family back home, how he sent them almost every dirham he made. He missed them like crazy but knew this was his chance to give them a better life. Raju's story isn't unique. It's a common tale among the thousands of workers here. He missed them like crazy, but knew this was his chance to give them a better life. Raju's story isn't unique. Thousands of workers live in labor camps outside the city. These camps are often overcrowded and lack basic amenities. Thousands of workers live in labor camps outside the city. The conditions? Let's just say they ain't pretty. Cramped rooms, shared facilities, it's tough. But these guys, they keep going, you know? They have dreams. The conditions? Let's just say they ain't pretty. Cramped rooms, shared facilities, it's tough. But these guys, they keep going, you know? They have dreams. They dream of building a better future for their families. Of one day returning home with enough savings to start anew. Cramped rooms, shared facilities, it's tough. But these guys, they keep going, you know? They have dreams. And it's not just construction. Domestic workers, often women, come from places like the Philippines, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, but these guys, they keep going, you know? They have dreams. And it's not just construction. Domestic workers, often women, come from places like the Philippines, Indonesia, Sri Lanka. They care for kids, clean houses, cook meals. They often work long hours and their rights? Well, let's just say there's a lot of room for improvement. And it's not just construction. Domestic workers, often women, come from places like the Philippines, Indonesia, Sri Lanka. They care for kids, clean houses, cook meals. They often work long hours and their rights? Well, let's just say there's a lot of room for improvement. Domestic workers, often women, come from places like the Philippines, Indonesia, Sri Lanka. They care for kids, clean houses, cook meals. They often work long hours. And their rights? Well, let's just say there's a lot of room for improvement. Look, Dubai's made progress in improving labor conditions, but there's still a long way to go. They care for kids, clean houses, cook meals. They often work long hours, and their rights? Well, let's just say there's a lot of room for improvement. Look, Dubai's made progress in improving labor conditions, but there's still a long way to go. We gotta talk about it though. They often work long hours, and their rights, well, let's just say there's a lot of room for improvement. Look, Dubai's made progress in improving labor conditions, but there's still a long way to go. We gotta talk about it though. These are the folks who built this city, and their stories deserve to be heard. Look, Dubai's made progress in improving labor conditions, but there's still a long way to go. We gotta talk about it though. These are the folks who built this city, and their stories deserve to be heard. They are the backbone of this glittering metropolis, the unsung heroes who toil away to make dreams come true. We gotta talk about it though. These are the folks who built this city, and their stories deserve to be heard. They are the backbone of this glittering metropolis, the unsung heroes who toil away to make dreams come true. Their sacrifices and hard work are the foundation upon which this city stands. These are the folks who built this city, and their stories deserve to be heard. They are the backbone of this glittering metropolis, the unsung heroes who toil away to make dreams come true. Their sacrifices and hard work are the foundation upon which this city stands. Let's not forget them. Moving to Dubai? Get ready for a wild ride. This city is unlike any other, a place where the future meets tradition in the most spectacular way. From the moment you step off the plane, you'll feel the energy and vibrancy that makes Dubai so unique. It's a melting pot of cultures, which is amazing, but also a recipe for some serious culture shock. You'll meet people from all over the world, each bringing their own customs and traditions. It's like a global village, but that can be overwhelming at times. Imagine going from a small town where everyone knows your name, to a city where you're just another face in the crowd. The sheer scale of Dubai can be daunting. First off, the language. Arabic is the official language, but you'll hear English everywhere. It's the lingua franca that connects everyone, from business meetings to casual conversations. But don't be surprised if you hear a dozen other languages in a single day. That being said, learning a few Arabic phrases will go a long way. It shows that you're making an effort to understand the local culture, and people really appreciate that. It shows respect, you know? Plus, it can be a great icebreaker and help you make new friends. Plus, it's always fun to impress the locals. Then there's the food. Dude, the food. Dubai's got everything. Whether you're a foodie or just someone who loves to eat, you're in for a treat. From Michelin star restaurants to street food stalls serving up shawarma that'll rock your world. The variety is mind-blowing, and you'll never run out of new dishes to try. Just be prepared for the spice levels. They don't mess around. Some dishes can be quite fiery, so if you're not used to spicy food, take it slow. But here's the thing about culture shock. It's not always about the big stuff. It's often the small, everyday things that catch you off guard. It's not always about the big stuff. It's the little things that get you. Like the way people greet each other, or the etiquette around dining and social interactions. It's the little things that get you. These small cultural nuances can be surprising and sometimes confusing, but they are also what makes the experience so enriching. Like in some cultures, it's rude to show the bottom of your feet. This might seem trivial, but it's important to be aware of these customs to avoid any unintentional offense. Or you gotta use your right hand to eat, not your left. This is a common practice in many cultures and something you'll quickly get used to. It's a learning curve, but hey, that's part of the adventure, right? Embracing these differences is what makes living in Dubai so exciting. Every day is a new opportunity to learn and grow. Look, moving to a new country, especially one as unique as Dubai, is a big deal. It's exciting, sure, but it can also be overwhelming. The key is to find your people, your tribe, you know? Dubai's got a massive expat community, so finding people who get it is easier than you think. There are groups for everything, from hiking to photography to just hanging out and talking about life in this crazy city. And don't forget about the locals. Emiratis are known for their hospitality. Get to know them, learn about their culture, and you'll discover a whole other side of Dubai. Just remember to be respectful, yeah? Adapting to a new place takes time. You'll have good days and bad days, but if you keep an open mind and a sense of humor, you'll find your groove in no time. Trust me. So, we've talked about the good, the bad, and the that's different of Dubai. It's a city of contrasts, no doubt. But through it all, there's this sense of hope, you know? Like anything is possible. People come to Dubai with dreams, big and small. They come to make money, to build a better life for themselves and their families. And yeah, it's not always easy, there are challenges for sure. But there's also this incredible energy in Dubai. It's a city on the move, always evolving, always reaching for the stars. And that energy? It's infectious. It makes you believe that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Dubai's story is still being written, and who knows, maybe you'll be a part of it. Just remember to look beyond the glitz and glamour and you'll find a city full of heart, resilience, and hope. Dubai, man, it's a trip. A city that's both a glittering oasis and a construction site. A place where you can find both unimaginable luxury and heartbreaking struggles, side by side. It's a city that will challenge you, surprise you, and ultimately stay with you long after you leave. Next time you see those dazzling photos of Dubai, remember the people behind the scenes. The ones who built it, who keep it running, who call it home. Because their stories, often untold, are just as much a part of Dubai's narrative as the skyscrapers and the supercars. Dubai is a reminder that the world is a complex place, full of contradictions and complexities. But it's also a place where hope and opportunity can be found even in the most unexpected places. So, yeah, Dubai. It's complicated, but hey, what's life without a little bit of complexity and intrigue, right?